Hello and welcome to this session. Today I want to talk about employee turnover in the workplace and how to calculate the turnover ratio or percentage for a year of employees leaving and the number of employees obviously staying in order to get the employee turnover rate. So let us begin. Employee turnover can be voluntary or involuntary turnover. So voluntary turnover takes place because people are leaving for better opportunities or they're dissatisfied with the workplace, more specifically with their immediate managers or the organization's policies or changes that have been implemented. Some employees might voluntarily leave to retire. We saw this during COVID, where after the COVID pandemic was somewhat over, many people decided not to come back to work. So they were ready or close to retirement. They decided to just go ahead and leave for retirement. On the other hand, involuntary turnover takes place when you have layoffs or dismissals. So dismissing employee takes place when employees are terminated because of performance standards or other deficiencies. And layoffs takes place when you have a separation of a large number of employees due to economic or strategic reasons for the organization. So regardless of whether turnover is voluntary or involuntary, remember it has ramifications and costs associated with it. Therefore, we need to know how many employees are leaving either voluntarily or involuntarily. It's been reported that the employee turnover rate in the US was 20% in the year 2020. There are many causes to voluntary turnover. So the desire to leave could be associated with low job satisfaction, low commitment to the organization, low quality relationships with managers or even coworkers. And stress can be a huge cause for people leaving voluntarily. So the job search behaviors and methods might be one indication that people intend to leave. And then if you compare your job with alternatives that are available in the market, that could be showing another intention to leave. When employees are being dismissed, keep in mind that poor fit with the organization is a factor. And ultimately, if there is a poor fit between the organization's goals and those of the employees, that means dismissal might be appropriate in this case. So we have to assess and understand the risks associated with dismissals to the organization. Keep in mind when you're hiring a new person may not be available, at least not readily. And another issue to consider is that if you don't dismiss a toxic worker, he or she might do more damage to the organization than keeping him or her there. So sometimes you have to say, okay, this might not be good for morale or an employee who has been around for a while with long tenure. Nonetheless, if he or she has a toxic influence on others, it's best to terminate him or her in a professional manner. So replacing the employee may cost between 90% to 200% of the annual salary because you're going through recruitment, selection, training, and trying to get another person that might or might not be a good fit with the department or the organization. So cost of voluntary turnover is negatively related to workforce productivity. In other words, productivity might decline at least for a short period, if not sustainable manner. When we're dismissing employees, usually organizations and managers provide a verbal warning to the employee to make it clear that his or her standards are not up to par. In other words, he or she needs to make improvements immediately. If improvements are not made, it is followed by a formal written warning. And if correction is not made, then usually are suspended or terminated. But suspension basically usually tells the employee that this is a very serious matter. Therefore, he or she should take immediate steps to either correct the deficiencies or he or she will be terminated. And obviously, sooner or later, If the employee is not making improvements, then you have to terminate the employee. But again, make sure you're fully in compliance with the laws and ethical procedures. Knowing the law means knowing things like employment at will, which most states in the U.S. abide by. So that means the organization could, and the employee has the right to leave the organization without much advance notice. There are exceptions, obviously, in the case of wrongful dismissals. So a dismissal that violates the law could be due to collective bargaining agreements that the employee and his or her union representatives has with the organization, or it could be based on employment contract where a 6-month notice might be required before an employee is terminated or layoffs are announced. Another law to be aware is the worker adjustment and retraining notification. So it covers employers with at least 100 full-time employees or those with at least part-time employees and full-time employees who work a combined total hours of about 4,000 hours per week. So they require that you provide a 60-day written notice before employees are laid off. So anytime we are not doing that, that means we're in violation of the WARN Act or laws. When you're delivering bad news of layoffs or terminations or discipline, there are many elements that you should be aware of as a manager or as an HR professional or as a team leader. So usually you need to arrange the setting in which the layoff news is communicated to employees, whether it's 1 or 2 employees or large groups of employees. It should be planned properly. You should deliver the news at the beginning of the meeting when people are arriving. So as a manager or HR professional, you need to provide detailed information about the layoff and wait for employees' responses, and you need to respond to their emotions and concerns. You need to provide information about what happens next in terms of severance packages and outplacement assistance and benefits that they're qualified for. So as a manager or HR professional, you need to summarize the discussion and at all times make sure that there's procedural fairness where you ensure coherent delivery of the news that is consistent with the values of the organization. And during the communication, managers should appeal to the facts of the case. So even though you may not agree with the decision, but keep in mind the organization has already decided. So put your emotions and personal subjective feelings aside and support everything with facts of the situation. As a manager, you should give employees a voice, hear them, hear their concerns, and provide reasonable explanations to each concern. As a manager or HR professional, keep in mind that we need to behave in a polite, respectful manner because when layoffs or dismissals take place, people are impacted and their employees are impacted, the community is impacted. And keep in mind that the government is impacted, receive less taxes. And also you and your organization might have to pay unemployment insurance, right? Because when people are unemployed, they still need income to survive and to keep their families and kids in school and intact with the normal day-to-day living. So until they get another position, it's always advised and recommended that we do exit interviews to determine why people are leaving and keep that data and share that data with all managers to make improvements in the organization. Another recommendation is to also hear the concerns of those employees who have stayed with the company, those that are not leaving. So these are called stay interviews. In other words, you're keeping your finger on the pulse of the customer, that is your employees, at all times. So when something changes in their behavior or in their health, just like medical doctors, we intervene, we take action to prevent the situation from getting worse. Always keep in mind that there might be alternatives to layoffs. So discuss with the employees the facts of the situation and ask for their input. Do they prefer reduced hours as opposed to terminating a certain percentage of employees? Would they rather have furloughs or unpaid time off or even a pay cut? So there are options available that might be a good substitute to layoffs or dismissals of large number of employees due to economic downturns. At all times, it's a good idea to keep data. And when you have data on an Excel file, for example, you can compute the employee turnover rate because that is by dividing the number of people leaving every single year by the average number of employees that stay or that has been working with the company, and you multiply that by 100 to get a percentage. Okay, so when you're evaluating turnover using Excel, it's not really that difficult. So my recommendation is make sure your data in terms of number of part of the organization are correctly documented on Excel files. So you can see here on this sheet, we have from January to December, a certain number of employees that left either voluntarily or involuntarily. These individuals did leave. And then also at the same time for each month, we have the number of employees that were working at the organization. So once you have these two numbers and they are correct, you can proceed to analyze the data and get a percentage of annual turnover rate for your organization. And you can do that by, again, dividing the total number of departures during the year by the average number of employees that stayed or worked at the company or department. And then you multiply that quotient by 100. So in order to get the first data, and that is the total number of departures for the year, simply look at the column for the number of employees for January all the way till December, and we would sum them up. So in this case, you would put an equal sign, then sum, and then column B2 all the way to B13. That should give you a number. In this case, it should be 605. And then on to looking at the average number of employees for the year. And in this case, you would put an equal sign in the Excel cell, followed by average, and then mark C12 through C13 for months of January through December. And this should give you, when you hit enter, should give you the total average of 1,241 employees approximately. And finally, you need to calculate the annual employee turnover rate. And in this case, you would put the equal sign and then cell B15 onto B16, multiply that by 100 in order to get the ratio, which should be about 48.7% annual turnover rate in this example. So as you can see, it's not that difficult to calculate turnover rate, but you need to have data that is accurate, that is correct, and that actually helps you analyze the data and share the percentage. So if the percentage is kept, let's say for every single month for a large company, and you see that some months are really, really bad in terms of a huge rise or growth in the number of the percentage of employee turnover, then you can discover the rationale, the reasons for that, hopefully, and maybe plan for next year to make sure there's no high turnover rate during those periods. As always, try to build a reputation for being an objective, analytic, and a rational professional in the field of human resource management. So you can analyze the data, the numbers, and all of the facts surrounding each situation to make evidence-based decisions as a rational, objective, and analytic HR professional. Good luck.